I remember when Alan Grayson said Republicans want you to die quickly. That's their plan for healthcare reform. Now, he was referring to the Republicans being standard bearers for what the healthcare insurance companies want to do, and that they're basically in the back pockets of the lobbyists, and they agree with everything that the healthcare insurance industry has pushed and fought against, and that the industry generally wants you to die quickly so they don't have to pay as much money. Now, of course, he took a lot of heat for that, but we see the story of Ian Pearl now, and you begin to realize, well, maybe he's not that far off. See, Ian has muscular dystrophy, and back when he was born in 1972, they didn't give him much of a chance of survival, certainly for very long. But he's a fighter, so he fought, and he went to high school. He was, in fact, voted the president of his high school, and he leads a perfectly functional life up until this very moment. No thanks to the healthcare insurance companies and the one that covers him. For him to survive, he needs a machine to breathe through and round-the-clock nursing care, so he can't do it by himself. That seems fairly obvious, right? And luckily for him, his dad had worked at a company where they had Guardian life insurance, and they covered home nursing care, and they did not have a permanent cap on lifetime coverage. So perfect. He had insurance. He needed insurance, his dad, right, for the son that he wound up having with some health issues. And that's why you buy insurance. Everything worked out just right. Of course, until Guardian decided, we got to get rid of this guy, and we got to get rid of people like him. Now, that seems harsh. How do we know that? Well, what Ian did when they tried to drop him was he did a lawsuit. Because they didn't just drop him. They all of a sudden changed the plan. And they announced to everybody, oh, by the way, the plan that you bought and that you paid for all these years is no longer the same plan. Now, we don't have nursing home care, and we don't have no permanent cap. We do have a permanent cap. It's a weird way I just said that. But in other words, we're going to cap your expenses, and then that's it. So if this actually applied to Ian, they would literally take his breathing device away because it costs too much, and they would not provide him a nurse, and he would die. He would die. Okay, now, even as I say it, it sounds like, well, I mean, that sounds like it's a bit much. But if you don't let the guy breathe, he will die. I mean, I'm not trying to demagogue the issue. That's just the fact of Ian's situation, right? And it costs a lot of money. And again, that's why you buy insurance. And his family doesn't have anywhere near the money needed to keep him alive. Now, maybe, I don't know, Republicans in the healthcare industry think, well, then, sad day for him. Take him off the thing and let him die. But I thought they were pro-life. I was pretty sure that they were pro-life and that they were concerned about death panels, right? So how did we find out what Guardian life insurance company actually thinks? Well, in the lawsuit, they found internal memos. And the memos describe people like Ian, including specifically Ian, as and patients that have muscular dystrophy, multiple sclerosis, brain injury, and paralysis. They describe them as, quote, dogs and train wrecks. And they tried to figure out a way to get rid of them, to dump them from coverage because they were too costly. Well, you could understand because Guardian, was in a lot of trouble and they weren't making a profit. Oh, wait a minute. Turns out they were. In the year 2008, as they're doing this to Ian Pearl, Guardian reported $7.5 billion in revenue, net profit of $437 million. Could they afford to pay the insurance that they were supposed to pay, according to their contract? Yes, for Ian and for everybody else, and they would still make a profit. But they wanted a bigger profit. And, $437 million just wasn't enough. And you know how little capital they had left in 2008? They only had $4.3 billion left in capital. Could they afford to pay for Ian Pearl as they promised his parents when they did the contract and as they promised all their insurance holders? Yes, they definitely could afford it. They just didn't want to because they were dogs and train wrecks, and they wanted to dump them so they could make more money. Now, if you trust your private insurance to look out for your best interest, well, you're just not paying attention. That's not how it works. Capitalism has wonderful parts to it, but we have to understand how it works, what the motivations are, what the incentives are. And do we want to apply it to certain life and death situations? Do we want to apply it to your local fire department where they say, well, you know what? We didn't make enough of a profit this year. If we had made $500 million instead of $400 million, maybe we wouldn't let those people burn to death. But it just didn't make sense for us to cover that fire. It cost too much. 12 people burned alive in it. Who cares? We made a bigger profit. Now, we don't allow that. That's not how we do it, right? We have to ask the government to do it because there are some things the government does better and some things that the private sector does better, right? Now, you can still make an argument that the private sector does this better, but can we at least not have can we at least have a choice and say, hey, you know what? What if I bought a public option where I pay my premiums and the government says, you know what? I'm not going to let you die. I'm going to honor my contracts. And since I don't have to make these obscene profits, it's actually going to cost less for you. It's going to be what it's supposed to be, insurance. You know, we all pay into it, and then if somebody needs it and needs care that costs a lot of money, well, that's where you get the money from. That's how insurance is supposed to work. Look, we just did the story of the little girl, Aislinn Bates, 2 years old. The insurance company says she's too skinny. We did the story of baby Alex. He's 4 months old. They say he's too fat. So they're not going to cover your babies if they're too skinny or they're too fat. They're not going to cover you if you're too sick, or you might potentially get sick, or if you're, in another story we did, if your mom was sick. If your mom had breast cancer, they're not going to cover you because your mom's pre-existing condition. They're not going to cover you if they find out later that you had acne, but now you have cancer while you didn't report your acne. They're looking for every possible way to not cover you. You know why? Because then they make more money. Duh. Okay, that's the incentive system that we have set up. And you could even make an argument, don't hate the player, hate the game. Well, I do hate the game. That's why we want to change it, so the American people have a real option for real insurance that does cover them. How can you look at all these stories and still say, nope, I think private insurance is on top of it. And I am positive that if I get sick, they'll cover me. If you think that, you really don't understand anything about how the system is set up, how capitalism works, what the motivations of these companies are, what their fiduciary responsibility is. Their responsibility to their shareholders is to cover as little people as possible, and that means you, and to take as much money from you as possible. If you like this system, you just don't understand how the world works. You're going to get hosed in a big way, then you're going to come crying later. But then it's going to be too late.